this is a question I've never really asked this, but
Yeah.
like through the whole process of the highs and the lows and whatever, what do you think my mindset was? You know, did you ever see a lot of doubt in me?
Yeah. Not to get into the personal stuff.
Of course.
But I thought one thing had to happen for you to win again. I didn't think you were going to win again unless that one thing happened.
Mm-hmm. What's up, guys, and welcome to the Shaw Strength Podcast. I am your host, Brian Shaw, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Mr. Andy Shaddeau. I always have struggled with Andy's last name. That's not a lie, and it's spelled Shaddeau.
That is correct.
But you end it with an O.
Yeah, my family changed it. It's a French name. It doesn't make sense, and to the point to where my older brother has changed it back to the French pronunciation. So his family is the Shaddeau family, and my family is the Shaddeau family. Same mom, same dad, different last name.
So I'm not incorrect. Any pronunciation
Never.
I'm okay with.
It's all right.
Yeah. Just Andy. It's Andy. So Andy is a special guest on this podcast for me because Andy's a big part of my story and was there for my ups, my downs, kind of everything in between, overcoming obstacles, challenges, things that I've had to deal with in my life, in my career. And I felt like it would be a really good kind of talking podcast here to just take a lot of the people back that follow me to the start.
Right.
Because I think I have shown more of my life after I kind of got to the top of the hill and was done maybe climbing the mountain. And then I've been to the top of the mountain and I've had to climb back up and, of course, do all of that. But I didn't start at the top of the mountain.
Right.
I started at the bottom.
Below the bottom.
Below the bottom. Yeah. And so I think that it is going to be very interesting to hear your perspective on a lot of this stuff. So how did we first meet?
Yeah, like kind of talking about Brian starting below and then coming up. And I always joke with people like I knew Brian before he was Brian. Like he was just Brian. He wasn't Brian Shaw. He wasn't, the GOAT. He wasn't one of the best, whatever. He was just Brian. Yeah. And this was 2008. I was doing an amateur show up in Windsor over Memorial Day weekend, which actually almost got canceled because we had tornadoes here, which in the Front Range is absurd to have tornadoes.
It was crazy. And it just affected that area.
Right, up in Windsor. So it was a big scramble to find out, are we going to still have the show? Where's the show going to be? This was before Facebook was like a big strongman utilized asset to where there was no information. So I don't even remember how I found out that it was at one of the guys' properties, where it was at. I don't even remember how I found that out, but I showed up super excited to compete. I knew Brian was going to be there. I was super excited about that because Brian had just come off of Hawaii's Strongest Man in February of 2008, where he finished second to Dave Oslin, who was just coming off of a podium finish at World's Strongest Man. So I was like, whoa, this is proper. Yeah. And so we're there competing and and Brian shows up and I tell my wife, who knew nothing at the time about strongman. I was kind of addicted, but like low key, didn't like make it crazy or whatever. Yeah. And I was like, babe, there's Brian Shaw. She was like, who? I was like, it's Brian Shaw. I'm going to go get a picture. She was like, sit down and eat your peanut butter sandwich and get ready for your next event because you need to focus on this. And so like, I never went up to you at that show actually. And in the meantime, over the previous couple of weeks, I was messaging with one of your former training partners on the Morandi Muscle Forum, which was the spot for all strongmen.
For a long time.
In that time, it was that and nothing else. So like I was messaging with him, like, hey, is it possible that I could come train? Because I'm training in my garage in Wellington with absolutely nothing. Exactly. But I wanted to get better. I wanted to do this. And so come to find out, I was able to go, I got your parents' address from him. He ran it by with you, like, hey, is it okay? Da 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 da. And I was able to come the following weekend, which was the first weekend in June of 2008, which was 3 weeks from you getting ready for Madison Square Garden, which at the time was going to be the biggest show of your career.
Yeah.
So I was weak as a kitten. Still I am weak as a kitten. And so like I needed to figure out what I could do to help you to get ready for that show, aside from like pushing you strength wise, because that just wasn't going to happen. Yeah. So that was where like I kind of brainstormed, like I got to show up and do anything that I think I would want someone to do for me if I was at that level. I put myself in your shoes and like, what do I need to do to help you? Not even knowing you at the time, right? Like, because this was before I met you on that Saturday, June 3rd or 4th, whatever it was. Yeah. And so that was like the whole start of what I wanted to bring to the table, basically so I could come back, right? Yeah. I wanted to come, I had ulterior motives. I wanted to help you, obviously, but like I wanted to come back because I was addicted to this game and I wanted to get better and I didn't know how, and I didn't have the gear to get better. Totally. So I was like, well, I'm going to do whatever I can do to hopefully at the end of that Saturday session, I get an invite back for the next Saturday session. And that was the start of it.
And that, it definitely was. So at that Windsor contest, I brought down, it was either 1 or 2 Atlas stones to help with the contest because the promoter needed some help. Right. And I brought them down. I think at that time, what did I have? The Durango?
You had the Durango,
yeah. So I put him in the back of the Durango. I'm pretty sure I broke the back hatch. That was all ruined by the time I was done with that vehicle. But I dropped one of the stones out at that contest and stupidly tried to catch it while it was going onto a dolly. And the stone, actually, my finger's still scarred up from it. My middle finger, just like the end of it, like exploded. And it was, if you've ever messed with an Atlas stone, you'll understand when it rolls and hits something, it's a very unique force that it produces. So my finger's blown up. I had it kind of wrapped it up, stayed there. I remember I went in to get it checked out because I was like, I don't know what you do with an exploded end of your finger. And they were like, well, we can't really stitch it up or whatever. You'll just have to work through it. But of course, in the back of my head, I'm getting ready for Madison Square Garden Super Series, trying to qualify for World's Strongest Man. So when you came down at the very first session, I was trying to work through that because we had an axle clean and press with a 2.5-inch axle. So it was not a normal, everybody now is used to a 2-inch axle. It was a 2.5. So your grip comes into play even more on that. And so I was trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do to work around this? And, you coming into training at that point in time, I was at my parents' house, right? So you mentioned that. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people realize that's where I started. Yeah. Yeah. So, I got faced back then with the gym, and it was just a world gym. Right. It kind of had got sold. And then they were talking about closing it down because the rent for the facility was too high and they just weren't able to make it work business-wise. It ended up moving to a different place and then a few years later closed. But I was scared because I thought they were going to close. And training was everything to me. Oh, yeah. So I said, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to problem solve. And essentially at that point was the only option I had was my parents' garage. Right. So they were kind enough and supportive enough to let me literally take over their garage with my equipment. I bought stuff that I, at that time, could not afford. Right. Yeah. And put it in there, built up some debt, and I said, I'm going to make this happen. And it was an uninsulated garage. So we trained in there year round. Yeah. Even with the seasons. And and during the week, I trained by myself. You would come down on the weekends on Saturday for training, but I would go out in that garage. And I think that's something a lot of people don't understand is the difficulty level of going into a cold garage. Oh yeah. Where think of how cold the bars are, the dumbbells, the weights. So I had little space heaters in there to heat up my hands between sets when I was training by myself, but it takes a lot of internal drive to walk out into a situation like that by yourself. Right. Where it's not well lit, it's cold, it's dark, and it's freezing. Right. At least in the winter, and then it's overly hot in the summer.
That's the thing.
So you're dealing with the elements, getting your training in. But when Andy came down, I remember that my former training partner there had said, hey, this guy's messaging, he's really excited to come down. And I somehow learned how far of a drive it was going to be for you, because it was an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, I was in Wellington, which is basically Wyoming at that point.
Yes.
Coming down to your parents' house down in Lupton, Fort Lupton.
Yep.
And at the time, my oldest was, she just turned 2.
2, yeah.
So I had a little one, and then my youngest, my wife was 4 months pregnant.
Yeah, because later that
year.
Right,
end of 2008, my youngest was born. So like, thankfully, my wife basically gave me Saturdays, because the hour and a half drive each way, and then the long training session, my Saturdays for training were close to 8 hours probably.
Yes.
So
it's just a big commute,
right.
And so I remember I really respected that when I heard how far you were going to drive, number one, and then you came down, and again, walking into that situation must have been uncomfortable a little bit.
Yeah, I got to your parents' house probably 30 minutes before the time.
I remember I didn't I pull up?
Yeah, you were out and around getting something, and then pulled up and parked behind me, and I looked in I looked in the rearview mirror. I was like, "Oh, well, it's go time. Let's go do this." Calm down the butterflies a little bit, and just kind of do you and see what happens.
But from the get-go, it's interesting that you mentioned that mindset of walking in and saying, what can I do to help? And I had other people come to training, and they definitely were more about, well, it's all about me.
Right.
I'm going to come in and do me.
Right.
And I could see from the get-go that you were more about the team.
Definitely.
More about that.
I grew up playing baseball and basketball, consummate team sports. I mean, no matter how good you are, you're not going to win every game if it's just you. Like Michael Jordan needed Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Tony, you know what I mean? Kobe needed Shaq, Shaq needed Kobe, da-da-da-da-da. But like, so my mind frame was like, this is it's an individual sport, but like 90% of it is team oriented. It's just a 10% competition. You know what I mean? Everything else, the weeks and months leading up is, it's such a team atmosphere, and building that team and trying to get everybody on the same page is something that we struggled with over the years.
Of course.
Guys coming in and out and finding the right mix was never easy.
Never. Yeah.
But like, we always were striving towards that. And when it hit, bro, it was the best thing on the planet.
Yes.
Like when it was you, Berkey, Tyler, and me.
Yep.
In
the core. Yeah.
In that 2012 to 2014 era, like before I left, to move to the East Coast, like, I don't know that there was a better crew in the world.
I would say no.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it just, at that point I was, a little bit stronger, still weak as a kitten, but like everybody, there's not a lot of groups that everybody pulls 650 plus.
Yes.
Or that everybody can do a 400-pound Atlas stone, or everybody can do an approaching an 800-pound frame. And that's where we were at that point.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So we were just pushing each other, trying to get better. And there was absolutely zero ego involved, which is, I mean, to be the best ever and have zero ego is like, how does that happen? But it just did.
Yeah. And a lot of that mindset, comes from my background, I guess, how I was brought up, and, the different sports that I was involved in, mainly basketball at a higher level. You win as a team, you lose as a team. Now, strongman is an interesting one because the team around you can make such a big impact.
Yeah.
But when the rubber meets the road, you have to go perform in the contest. But having a great team around you makes you so much better.
Yep.
And especially if they are a help versus a hindrance.
Right.
And if they have that team mindset going in, like what you're describing, was so beneficial. But before we jump forward to that too much, eventually the training in my parents' garage, there was an opportunity to go to a more roomy facility that was a little better insulated and heated, I guess, to some extent year round. And that happened to be in Windsor.
Right.
So it was a pretty far drive, but I got the space for free.
Right. Yeah.
And it was a grocery store that was out of business. It was their storeroom, and it was kind of next to an Anytime Fitness.
Right.
And that was kind of how the connection happened. Was basically the owners of that I met them through the strongman world a little bit.
Right.
And they extended the invite and said, hey, if you want to come bring some of your stuff in that back storeroom, you can.
Right.
And I was, okay, well, I need more room. I want to get some more stuff. And at that point, I think I had started getting a little bit more equipment built or just bought some more stuff to train with. And we moved everything to Windsor from my parents' garage. Of course, they were happy. We left the floor of their garage completely ruined from dropping the stones. And even though there was a good platform built, garage floors are not typically made to withstand Atlas stones being dropped on them. So eventually that got patched up a little bit. And, thank you to my parents for, accommodating that and being supportive. But we moved the equipment there to Windsor, and, things kind of changed. And you were on the other side of Windsor, like you said, in Wellington. And then, ironically enough, you moved closer to Fort Lupton, being in Frederick.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the training went back that way.
Right.
So I think for a little while when we were in Windsor, you were in Wellington.
Yeah. So that's funny that you talk about that, because the first time we were up there was the day after Christmas in 2009.
Okay.
At 6 a.m. So you had a flight. I forget where you were going. You had a flight to somewhere that day. So we had to train super early. And the first time we got keys to that place was 6 a.m. on the day after Christmas in 2009. So you got ready for, at that point was the Fit Expo, the Arnold, everything happened there, but it started the day after Christmas at 6 a.m., which again, like, I had to drive 45 minutes from Wellington to Windsor, or 30 minutes. You had to drive 30 minutes from Lupton
to get there.
Yeah. So
there was several early mornings, because I would go, and Windsor's not close to the airport.
Right.
So to make that happen, you got to be dedicated to get up and make it there.
Yeah.
And, just on a normal basis, once we moved the gym to Windsor, I actually ended up living in Thornton, which was much further
south away. Yeah.
So my drive turned into an hour 20, hour 30 just to get there. And I would pick you up on the way. We would drive there and do that 4 times a week.
Yeah. And this was, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, it was after 7 p.m. because I had little kids that they went to bed at 7. And then Brian would pick me up
at 7.
So it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to train. I'm a professional athlete that trains at 2 p.m. That's the most ideal time for me. No, it was like, well, we got to do this at a different time, and I'm going to accommodate this because this is important.
Yes.
And so we would go 7, get up there at 8, train for 2-3 hours, leave at 11, and then drive the hour back. And then you would have to drive another 25 minutes, get home at 1 in the morning or whatever it was on those nights.
But that was the commitment. And sacrifices were made there on my part, certainly, but also on your part.
Right.
And I had already seen what you were bringing to the table.
Right.
And with your family, your kids at that point, that was something that was important.
Right.
And, and that's something that I have stressed along the line is you have to be a good dad.
Right.
You have to be a good husband. You should strive for those things. And so there was no way in the world that I was going to draw a line and say, hey, Andy, I know that you really want to be there to put your kids to bed, but that really hinders my schedule. Right. And we're not going to make this work. So we did make it work, and we drove to Windsor. Right. And I think that something that was so unique about that was the drive time between. Yeah. So we would go up there, and having the dedication, I think for a lot of people that might be listening to this, they may not get that.
Right.
They may not get, it's easy to speak the words right now.
Right.
And say, oh yeah, I was driving an hour 20, hour 30 here every week. But when you have to do that day in and day out to make your training happen, and maybe you're a little bit sore. Right. You're a little bit beat up.
Oh yeah.
You had a bad day, or you're tired.
Yeah.
It's like, man, how easy would it be to say, nah, God, that's an hour and a half. I'm not doing that today.
I'm tapping out.
I'm going to check out. But it happened no matter what.
Yeah.
If it was snowing, if it was cold, it was hot. There was no excuse to not make that happen.
Right.
And that type of dedication is lacking,
Right.
I think, for a lot of people out there, because it's such an inconvenience to, you know, go out to the gym or to set up a home. You know, a lot of people now are setting up home, you know, gyms and trying to incorporate that. But, you know, they're on their couch watching TV and they can't even make the trip from the TV to their gym
or their basement, or, you know, if it's right there, like what's the excuse? And and that was always one of our things. And I think I made a banner once, no excuses.
Yes.
Like, I mean, you can make excuses or you can make it happen. And this whole time frame, like with a lot of things, it's like it takes a village, right? Like you said, your parents sacrificed their garage floor, amongst other things. Yeah, for sure. Like my family sacrificed, and I told my wife early on, I was like, this is special. This is something that is going to be special. I'm not sure how special, but it's going to be special. Yeah. And I want to be involved with this. And at the time, my wife was either in grad school or getting ready to start medical school, which when we were in Windsor and I lived in Frederick, that's when she was in medical school. So basically I was kind of like a single dad.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So like to have my wife like do her thing, me support that, and then she support me like 200%, and us like supported you as well. Like she came out to the Arnold one year. She's not into fitness like that, but she was like, oh, I want to come. In 2011, the first year you won. Yep. She was out for that, which was an amazing thing for us to be able to share. Yeah. But like a lot of things take a village, and you know, this is one of those things.
No, absolutely. I think that's one of the unique things. I mean, we can talk about that a lot, certainly how much we value family and value that, but also the sacrifices that were made. And I always felt as though, and I don't know how much I communicated this with you, but I felt like, you know what, Andy's got to get up in the morning, right? And he's got to have a family. He's got to do, and I'm going through a lot of that right now too, with our boys and Carrie, and, you know, trying to play that role with also training. And sometimes I don't know how you did it, to be fair.
So the thing that like sticks out with that is Thursday nights, deadlift night. Yep. They would be our longest nights. So we would leave Windsor sometimes at 11 to 12.
Big time.
And then the hour drive. And then we would sit in my driveway
and talk
and game plan and strategize and try and figure out how we could get that 1 point on the deadlift at the Arnold, because it was that important. Or that 1 point on the deadlift at Worlds, because that 1 point instead of a half a point isn't a tie. You know what I mean? Like you get the, you know, so sometimes I would go into the house at like probably 2 a.m. And I have to be up at 6 to work on Friday. Luckily it was Friday, so there was only one day. Like if that was the case on Monday, I don't know that I would have survived through Friday after being that sleep deprived.
Well, and that's, I think, speaking to that, it's being all in for something. And I gained so much power from that, even though, again, I'm the one that had to go do the deadlifts. It was like, you know what, man, Andy's in my corner. Yeah. And he sacrificed too to make this happen. So it's not all just me. Right. I'm going out and I've got that behind me as well. Right. And that support. And, you know, you were at those contests with me when all of the training and all of the time and all of the dedication and all the hard work got to get put on display. Right. And we did find that 1 point. Right. Or we did follow through. And I remember even in Windsor, and this is before stuff was being put on video. Right. Really. Yeah. But we wrote goals on the wall. Right. Yeah. Right. And they were goals that were big.
Absurd.
Very big.
Like if like at a snapshot, there was 6 or 8 or whatever it was at any given point, and like each one of them were absurd. Yes. Like this isn't real life. You know what I mean? Like it was just just to wrap your mind around one of them, and then to be able to like go all, like you said, go all in on that one. Oh, but there's 4 to 6 more that we're also going all in on. You know what I mean? It was crazy.
The level that was expected. And I think the unique thing about what happened in the training with those goals is the fact that there were above world record lifts happening in training
weekly.
Yes.
Month, like,
and it was expected, but we didn't celebrate.
Right.
So it was not, oh my God, I did this. Let me tell everybody about it. It was like, okay, cool. You got that done. We're moving up.
Right. Yeah. It's like, we did this. Okay. How do we get to 10% above that?
Yes.
How can we get to 10% above an absurd lift? What do we have to do to get there?
Yep.
So that turned into the new goal. Instead of being like, we're great.
Yes.
We're happy. It was like, what's the next? Okay, cool. But next,
never satisfied. And and I think as we transition, so what happened in Windsor, basically, to kind of summarize that, is we started setting up the storeroom of the grocery store much nicer.
Right.
It literally looked like a gym in there.
Yeah. The owners thought it was going to be one or two things. We turned it into a gym. Yep. It was a hardcore gym, and it kind of like they were taken aback when they realized because they didn't really put any restraints on anything. They were like, "Oh, here's the keys. Just go ahead, put some stuff in here." They didn't. I don't think they had any grasp that it was going to be like the best gym on the planet.
No, and as equipment started coming in, I think it was either the landlords or somebody walked through there at one point and were like, "Hey, this is being used for much more than just storage.
Right.
We're going to start charging you."
Right.
And so then I got that bill, and it started to make less and less sense to drive that far paying for fuel.
Right.
To get up there and train when you're now paying for the space. So at that point, that was 2011.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Around there. So 2011 was a great year, like you said, won the Arnold that year, and then was coming back off the tie at World's Strongest Man in 2010, getting ready for Worlds there. But that was kind of the time where we moved then to the storage condos.
Right, yeah.
Or storage condo, I should say.
Yeah.
One, and I was able to rent that facility, but moved it much closer than actually
it was 5 minutes from me.
Yeah, right behind your house.
I was loving it.
Yeah, so that kind of took away the drive, but it also, when you start having to pay for the facility, it made a heck of a lot more sense to move it there.
Right.
So that was 2011, and that's where the first World's Strongest Man title happened. Was out of that storage condo, and that was a lot of fun. But that's when Tyler started coming. Yep. Burke actually started coming in Windsor.
Right. Yeah.
And then Rob Lewis was another guy. Who was big into strongman here in Colorado.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the time, heavyweight, and he would come down with Burke, and he actually started bringing Burke.
Right. That's how we got introduced to Mike.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of that culture, the mindset, the people started kind of falling into place.
Right.
And I think that's really where everything started to blossom. So what you and I had kind of started to create as a culture with the gym and people that were coming in, and what was expected, and everybody's role in the team. That's really where that started to blossom. I think is when we got to the storage condo. Yeah. Leading up to World's Strongest Man in 2011, and then we started having different people come in, like Stefan Solvi came in 2011, right actually before World's Strongest Man.
Yeah. He came to help out at your amateur show that you put on.
Yes. Yeah. And that was unique. But we started having such a good time with training, but we finally, I feel like, kind of found that flow of, okay, we're walking in with end goals in sight, and everybody that comes in is expected to perform and expected to push themselves when they're in here. It's not social hour. We're gonna have a heck of a good time, but everybody knew when that switch got flipped, whether it was the radio went up or just the volume, just an energy, and you could tell everybody in that room, the energy just went up, and it was like, okay, it's go time, and it was so hyped up, for so much of that,
and it didn't matter who it was. Like, I got the same, at being the weakest in the group, I got the same energy from you and Tyler and everybody. Absolutely. Because there were no egos.
Yep.
Because it's this game, it's you against the bar.
Yep.
For the most part, right? You're competing against other people, but like, you can't control what they're doing. Yep. You can control what you're doing. So what do I have to do to be my best self and not necessarily compare myself against a lightweight pro like Tyler, or a top level guy like Burke, or one of the best, like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, what can I do to challenge myself? But at the same time, putting a challenge on myself, also putting a challenge to you, right? Yep. Like, we would build, I always say, like, I would build a brick wall for Brian and he would run through it. just like he would build a brick wall for me and I would run through it. Like we would do kettlebell death, we called it, right? So everybody get in a line, 108-pound kettlebell. We're going to do swings, race to 100, least amount of breaks. Yep. And we, after the end of that, after the 3 or 4 rounds or whatever it took, like we'd be dead.
Yep.
But like there would always be somebody that would go over 100. Mm-hmm. And it was somebody that started the round because they knew what was up, right? Mm-hmm. So it was usually me or Tyler. We would go boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So like one of us would get to 100 and keep going. And then everybody in their mind had this thought like, okay, we're getting towards 100. We're going to be done. And then this dude goes and does 110. Well, then, okay, I got to do 120.
Of course.
And then I got to do you know what I mean? So that stuff like that got to be real stupid as far as like like I said, building this brick wall, and we're all going to run through it together in, you know, steel sharpens steel. You know what I mean?
That's it. I mean, it's a game of, you know, kind of, can you top this type of
but not never malicious.
No,
never like you suck, I'm gonna beat you. It's like I'm gonna do this to put that number on you. Now I want you to step up and beat that number. I don't want to beat you. I want you to beat me because I'm gonna get better because of that.
Of course.
Not like resting. Oh, I hit my 100 because that's what we talked about and everybody high fives. Like, no, let's push myself. So I push Tyler to be a better pro, to push Mike to be a better, you know, da. You know Absolutely. What I mean? That was the mind frame for everything.
That's so valuable. I think there's so much power behind that because it's so hard for people to understand that.
Right.
Because when somebody comes after you and you're pushing them and then they push you.
Right.
And you have to top that.
Right.
And we would kind of go in an order, like you said.
Yeah, always.
Right? And I think the most important role, or one of the most important roles that you played, was you set the bar.
That's
because you came in and started and said, okay, well, I'm gonna do 110.
Right.
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 And so then let's just say Tyler comes next. Tyler does 115.
Right.
And then Burke comes next and he's like, well, I better be stronger than Tyler.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do 120.
Right. Yeah.
And then I'm coming last, and if I don't do 125, 130, right, then I'm not doing what I should do.
Right.
So everybody's put on the line. So instead of saying, hey, I'm tired, I'm good at 100.
Right.
I'm not ever going to stop.
Right.
And so and I'm, you know, and you knew better probably than anybody how to push my buttons.
Oh yeah.
To get me to do a little bit more.
Right.
Even because I was already going to win.
Right. Oh,
and
yeah.
The thing for so long, and this is something that's really important for people to understand. I was, you know, I know we were talking about Burke coming in, but for a long time, my bar was so, because we had other people kind of filter in and out with training.
Yeah.
My bar was so far above anything anybody else in the group could do.
Right.
And that's where it had to be.
Right.
So for you and your role to push me, you had to make it an imaginary bar.
Right.
That you said, well, Brian, you got to do this. Right.
Yeah.
Or we're going up in a deadlift, and you sometimes wouldn't even ask me.
I would just load the
this
bar.
This didn't happen the first couple training sessions.
Right.
As you got into it, you knew, hey, I'm not even going to ask. We're putting another 50 pounds on the bar and you're going to do it.
Right.
And it was like, okay, that's your next set.
Right.
Boom.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Just like we're talking about the weights at the lifts at the Arnold and stuff like that. Like you would finish your lift and come back to me, which is like one of the coolest things I think, personally. Like you would be like, what do you think?
Yep.
And I'm like, in the moment, I'm like, boom, 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 let's do this. But like on reflection, I'm like, holy cow. Like Brian trusts me.
Yep.
I don't want to say with his life, but like with his livelihood. You trusted me. Like whatever, it came to a point to where it's like, whatever I said, you were like, let's do it.
Yep.
And it was like, that's one of the coolest things, I think, like, is that we had that trust.
Big time.
And it was never like blowing smoke, like, oh yeah, you got this, even though I know you didn't have it. You know what I mean? Like, so there would be times where you would be like, oh, I think I'm going to do this. And I'm like, well, what about this strategically? And then you'd be like, okay, cool, let's do that then.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So like that was always cool to me.
But that came from, let's just say, calling a max deadlift in a contest or whatever, when you're calling the weights, that came from all of those long nights.
Right. Yeah.
Of seeing me and where I'm breaking down.
Right.
How I'm breaking down and how much more I have in the tank.
Right. Right.
And we learn that through very much a trial and error.
Right. Yeah.
But also through a tremendous amount of hard work.
Right.
And you were the guy that was right there with me
for every lift.
So for me, and I mean, I appreciate that, man. But when I walk off from that and come over and say, Andy, what are we doing?
Right.
Right. Like,
right.
What do you think? And you come back with something. I knew, just like training,
right,
that it was just like a training session, because we had practiced it so many times.
Right.
So it was not a let's second guess this. Let's try to figure it out on the fly. We already knew what we were going to do.
Right.
And speaking of a deadlift, there was hours and hours and hours and hours of talking and strategizing and thinking about how all of that strength was going to be applied in the moment when it counts.
Yep.
And that was all built through hours of hard work and dedication and sacrifice.
Right.
So it's not, you go in the trenches with somebody and put in that type of work, confidence is built.
Right. Right.
And it is a bond that's not breakable when you go into a contest, because it's something where if you don't have that trust and confidence in somebody that's with you, done.
And that was always my thing. Like, if I can take some stress away during one of the highest stress 45 minutes of the year, which the Hummer Tire deadlift was one of the highest stressed 45 minutes of every year.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I need to know where Brian is physically, mentally, and because he might not know, like, because he's in the moment, he's in the zone, he can't pick up all the cues. So like, I needed to know from an outsider perspective on the inside where you were at physically and mentally in that. And I would confidently say, we're doing this. And you were like, okay, over and done with that discussion. So you were able to focus on the lift and not think about, oh, is this the right thing? Should I be doing something different? You know what I mean? So that was like my job for that instance, is to take all that stress away confidently and let you go perform, put you in that good mental mind frame to hit that next lift.
And I think shifting from there, I think an important topic is the mentality of the group, but the mentality of the group after winning happened.
Right. Yeah. Because
there were a lot of very big performances, very big wins that happened. And I remember it was probably either after the Arnold in 2011 or World's Strongest Man in 2011 when I won, and then every other contest, that year, the next, it was just kind of one of these things where I think at one point it was either an interview you did with somebody that was coming into film or something like that, but you questioned where my head was going to go after winning those big titles.
Right.
And how the group was going to be affected. If I was going to come in training and say, okay, well now I'm the world's strongest man. Right. Like all this hard work and climbing that mountain, we're at the top of the mountain.
Right.
Now things are going to change.
Right.
And I think that it's important, not for me to say it,
right,
but for you to tell people, because I think that there's a false narrative kind of around that, where somebody at the top that has won everything,
right,
and has become the best,
right,
through hard work and building up, now they kind of they let that breath out, they get that weight off their shoulders, so to speak, get the monkey off the back, whatever you want to say. All right, I did it. Right. What's the next step?
Right. Are you content?
Yeah.
My question, which you could easily have been, because it was an amazing year. Are you content with one Arnold title and one World's Strongest Man?
But what's the answer?
And that this is where and even before that, we started talking about legacy.
Yep.
Right. Like,
yep.
And it was always like, oh, Marius has 5.
Yep.
And it was always, why can't I?
Yep.
Like it's like we talked earlier, absurd numbers, right? Yep. Just absurd. But if you break it down insofar as why can't I? Mm-hmm. I mean, Marius was amazing, but he's a guy. He's not superhuman. He's not, you know, a god. He's a guy. Why can't you be that guy?
Yep.
So like we started transitioning from we're going for this world's to, oh, we're building a legacy. Like, and that was one of the things that, like when we were ramping up and getting close to an Arnold or getting close to Worlds, like one of the cues, bro, what's your legacy? Yep. This is for your legacy. Do you want to be a guy that won and got happy and got full, or are you still hungry to grind and grind and grind? Yep. And I mean, the last 10 years obviously answered that question.
After a win, how long did it take me to be back in the gym?
No sessions were skipped.
Never.
Aside from if you were traveling, whatever. But like, if you got back on a Sunday from the show on Saturday, we were training Monday night. Like, it would be backed off because you were sore as, you know, sin. But like, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to take a week off and relax and enjoy. Like, the win was the enjoyment. But then right away, it was like the switch was flipped. And it's like, okay, what's next? What's next? I need to stay hungry and I need to grind just like I did before, because I have a target on my back, right? Like I have the biggest target because nobody had ever won the Arnold and Worlds in the same year. That was huge at that time.
For sure.
So like in 2012, the target was the size of Colorado, and you could have either like been content with that great year or got back to the grind and worked harder, which you did. You worked harder leading up to the Arnold. Unfortunately, there was the injury, but like leading up to the Arnold, you worked harder that year and you were stronger that year, it's so frustrating. You were stronger in March of 2012 than you were in March of 2011, which the Arnold 2011 could be argued is the best strongman performance ever, with what you did as far as the press, the stone, the deadlift, the frame, you know, and the dumbbell.
I mean, I was ready for big things.
Yeah, you won in 11. You won the Arnold without having to do one of the events, which is ridiculous because it was only a 6-event show. So to have enough point stockpile. They changed. Yeah, that's right. They changed it to 5.
It started with 6, and then they dropped out the yoke. Because it used to be the yoke,
right?
And then you would do the frame,
right?
Both, and they dropped the yoke out.
So
only 5 events.
So you had that show 1 after 4 events, which I would argue is the most insane show ever in the history of strongman. And you were stronger in 12, which like is a pit in my stomach to say. Based on what happened, because you were gonna, like, not to blow smoke and hyperbole and whatnot, but like 2012 was gonna be a bloodbath.
Oh, crazy!
Like so to have
and they took out my stone.
Took out the stone, and
because you remember what stones I had made, right?
Right. Yeah, you had the 558 and the 629 to get ready for that.
And the first day I had both of those, I picked them up.
Right. Yeah. Like silly.
Yes.
Like. I was like, is that because the way when you loaded the 558, you had set up too far away from the bar.
I had to walk with it.
You picked a 558 stone up well over the 48-inch bar and had to take 2 steps forward. And then you put it over the bar with, I don't even think it touched the bar until the very end, like the back end of it.
This is, speaking of that, this is kind of the start of the YouTube. Right? So Andy, fun fact here is Andy actually started my YouTube with me.
Right.
He did. And I think it might have been the first video was in Windsor when Stephen Colbert, he called me out on his show.
Right.
And was comparing, basically saying that USA wasn't great and Lithuania had the world's strongest man.
Right. And we were
this is a very raw moment because this was coming off my tie in 2010, and he called me out on a national show.
Yeah.
So we made a response video that Andy and I kind of coordinated.
I wrote a script to like the whole setup. Like everybody's seen that video, but
it might still be on YouTube.
Right.
It probably is
for sure.
Yeah.
But like it was obviously Colbert is a satirist, so it was a joke, and some people didn't realize that.
No, they took it. I mean, very literally.
Right.
And we tried to poke fun back at him. I don't think he never took the bait.
Right. Yeah. There was never a response, unfortunately.
But this, the 558 stone load definitely made it on YouTube as well with the front carry.
And my wife was the one that edited that video.
We went to your house. That's right. Sat at your kitchen table.
She had just gotten a MacBook.
Yeah.
And what she did, was it Eye of the Tiger? What was the song? Whatever it was, she hit it just perfect.
Yeah.
To where like people listening probably know, but like whatever the note or the word was hit right when you loaded the stone.
It was good.
It was pretty
I was
sick.
so pumped about that. It was probably a 1 minute, minute YouTube video, but it was loading this stone. I was like, okay, this is a message. And then of course, after that, we didn't get to do stones at the 2012 Arnold, which would have been ridiculous at that point. But, either way, coming back from winning, I think that that's something that is not everybody can do.
Right. Yeah.
And that mindset, it was always for me. And I think in some ways I had people around me, not you, but other people say, Brian, aren't you enjoying your success?
Right.
And for me, you'd get a trophy, whatever, right? And it's like, all right, I came for that. I did what I expected of myself.
Right.
And then we're going to move on.
Right.
Right. That's a very short-term gratification.
Right.
Because the end goal, that was my mission.
Right.
That's what I planned on. That's what I expected of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going back to training. But I think that let's talk about some more. These are the great points.
Yeah.
Right. The winning.
Yeah.
Low point you touched on just a little bit was 2012, right? Bicep tear at the Arnold. We're not going to go into all that because that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
But coming back from that, right? I got back. I actually tore my bicep. I had an opportunity lined up to film a commercial with Hefty Bags. Right. So I went out there immediately after I had the surgery. I don't think I've ever told anybody that. And I had just had my bicep repaired, and I was I had to hold chili, right? It was like comparing my strength compared to the bag, and if the bag could hold more chili, like a kind of, I think they set up kind of like a soccer mom or a mom, just like, hey, I can hold more chili than you can. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But I'm out there, and I remember trying to straighten my arm enough to get an elbow sleeve on to cover up all my stitches and do this commercial. And I had to do that. And then from that commercial, I then took a good chunk of that money to buy the storage condos on the other side of that building, which I still own.
Yeah.
And that's where the gym then moved to. But that was a low point.
Oh, right? Yeah.
Let me ask you this. After that bicep surgery, how long did it take for me to get back in the gym?
Oh, after you were recovered from the anesthesia, whatever it was, a day or two.
Yep.
Like it was your left arm. We took the left hand handle off of the safety squat bar and the spider bar, so you wouldn't grab that and try and pull on that bicep. So we did everything that we could possibly do to be able to keep grinding. Right. And it was all lower body. And actually, speaking of the kettlebell death, we did that one time, and you did it with one arm.
I was pissed off.
Yeah.
I don't remember who called me out. Well, actually, I don't even think I needed to be called out. We were going to do it.
Yeah.
And I think I said something like, you guys all have two arms. I have one arm. I'm still going to beat you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I was doing it all with one hand.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure I still won.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
If I said I was going to do it, I guarantee I went until I was.
That's the thing.
I would have died before I started.
We were going to push until right before you broke.
Yep.
Like, we weren't going to make you break.
I think we had some new guys.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yep.
We had some new guys come in, and I didn't like
their
some
work
of their.
ethic.
They were not pushing enough, and I said, "All right, we're done training for today. We're doing this.
Right.
Put the kettlebell, get in a line, and go.
Yep.
Right." And because I wanted to set an example, even though I was a couple weeks out of surgery, I said, "We're swinging this damn kettlebell.
Right. And
once it's your turn, you're doing it.
Right.
Now, and I don't remember, there was different things that we had to do to set the tone.
Yeah.
But I remember, and I kind of felt at that point in that time, maybe it was my fault because I wasn't able to train the same way. And these guys came in and they were goofing off and whatever.
Right.
And it really pissed me off. So I said, it's time to do this.
Yeah.
And we got in a line, and they were on the floor throwing up. I'm pretty sure a couple of them puked and whatever. But you had to set that tone.
Right. It's one of those things where if you're bringing someone into one of the best groups,
Yep.
like there's accountability. And if somebody is patting themselves on the back for how good they're doing
Yep.
and how strong they are relative and this and that and how cool they are, then it's like, well, you need to be knocked down because you aren't going to get better that way.
No.
You aren't going to get us better. You aren't going to get yourself better. So either it was kind of like a sink or swim.
Big
like
time.
we're going to push.
Yep.
And if you come back, you're one of us.
Yep.
And if you don't come back, it was never meant to be. And there were quite a few that didn't come back over the years.
Big time.
And that was kind of what we had to do just to keep the momentum going, to push through the adversities and the downtimes. You can't have lackadaisical people when you need focus.
Yep.
And in 2012, after March, like it had to be all hands on deck, 100% focus.
Yep. And then we went from there, and 2012 was a kind of a gut check year for me because of that bicep, and then I ended up having some very bad nerve damage, not from the surgery, but from sleeping wrong. And I've talked about that a little bit. I'm sure in some of the other episodes I'll talk about that a little bit more. But coming back from all of that, going through World's Strongest Man in 2012, I lost function on my hand, and that was a tough one, right, to come back from. And there was some very low points after that. Coming back from that, figuring out what was going on, what was wrong with me, why my hand wasn't working, and trying to build back from that. And I don't know if you even remember, I'm sure you do, coming into deadlift, because my hand had started to atrophy so bad.
Right.
And I was like, well, I'm coming into deadlift, and my bones were just rubbing on the bar. Right. And it was such a horrible thing. And, I would still show up to train, go through it the best I could. And there was points where it was I felt like I was going to break my own hand. Yeah. Because I didn't have enough flesh left to, it was crazy. Right. But that was probably of our time together, both from a competitive standpoint and a personal standpoint in my life, I was kind of at the bottom. Right. And it was such a quick roller coaster ride. Yeah. Because in 2011, I was on top of the world. Oh, yeah. Right?
It's crazy how you went from such a high to such a low. And then, like you said, it got darker. Big time. Like the bottom wasn't the bottom until like the end of 2012.
Well, even, end of 2012, even beginning in 2013 I was at a low point. Yeah. I really was. And a lot of people don't realize, because after winning World's Strongest Man, you're supposed to be on top of the world. But, you fall down, you have that injury, a couple, the nerve, the bicep, coming back from all that. Right. And trying to build back up. But I was at a point where I didn't know if my hand was going to work anymore. Right. And my life, I felt like, was kind of falling apart. And it was a very negative energy. Yeah. And that's where I think, ironically enough, a lot of my positive momentum and positive mindset came from, and not came from, I shouldn't say, but definitely was reinforced. Yeah. Because I had to be positive in a very negative situation. Right. To build positive momentum, to try to build back. And I think that's where, a few of you guys even came to me individually, outside of training, like, hey, Brian, worried about you. Yeah. Like, what's going on? Yeah. And without going into too much of the personal life stuff, I needed to make some changes. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And it kind of all came to a head around that time, trying to come back from, it was a whammy after whammy after whammy of negative. Right. But all those changes were made. Right. And into 2013. So May 1st of 2013, I had that surgery to get my nerve released. Right. And I remember walking into that doctor, and he said to me, Brian, you're 6 months too late. Right. And so once you have nerve damage, is nothing to mess with. Right. Very, very bad. Right. And I remember he said that to me from that surgery. And at that point, World's Strongest Man was in August of 2013, first, second week. And so I said, all right, I've got May, I've got June, I've got July. Right. To get ready. Yep. From the point where I literally have to teach my hand how to move again. Right. And how my fingers are going to move, to win World's Strongest Man. And that was the goal. And that was the objective. And you remember this.
Oh, yeah.
And I went to the treatment place, like rehab, for my hand. And I was going in there, and that I told him too.
Right.
I came in and he pulled my, I wasn't really a cast. It was like a brace and all that off my arm. And I have this big scar, all stitches, whatever. And I said to him, our objective is to win World's Strongest Man in 14 weeks.
Right.
And he looked at me and he said, I don't know.
Right.
Like he was very unconfident. And actually he said, well, I don't really want you training for, 4 to 6 weeks.
To even try.
And I just said, well, that's not going to happen.
Right.
I said, you're going to come in, you're going to tell me what to do, and we're getting this done.
Right.
And I remember one time in training, we were doing car deadlifts, I think, because there was in 13 there was a car deadlift in the qualifiers.
Right.
And because I hadn't been able to train adequately, my calluses weren't really built up, and I just ripped the skin off my hand horribly, right? And I walked in to treatment, and you were with me in training, and I was like, I'm going, man.
Right.
Like, this is go time. And I walked in, and of course he starts with analyzing my hand, and I walk in and kind of open it up, and it's just ripped,
raw skin.
It's just completely flayed open. And he's like, well, what happened there? And I just said to him, I was like, I just slipped. And he was like, okay, yeah, it looks like a pretty good slip, you know. But he knew what I was doing because I communicated with him, and I said, this is what's happening. Right. And you are going to help me or not help me.
Right.
I'm doing it, and this is what's happening.
Right.
So, but the thing is that build back too, I have been around people who have doubted me, have thought that I couldn't do something.
Right.
And I remember during that time, all of the changes that had to happen, and of course coming back from that, and other things that I had to deal with in my personal life, and to get things in check. You never wavered and said, Brian, you're going to win. Right. And I said, we're going to win.
Right.
And we're getting it done.
Right.
And so the training had to happen. But, building back, there's different instances that we could talk about that I could explain to you where that was such a valuable thing to me at that time.
Right.
And something that in a big way, when you moved, I lost from my training because I don't know if this is something that I proved to you from the jump, right? So like going back to 2008, I had my finger blown apart, and I said, I'm going to qualify for World's Strongest Man. And at that time, not very many people believed that I could do that because we had such a strong American
The Americans were stacked.
And I had to beat somebody to get a spot.
Right. You were at that point, you were on the outside of the top. You were Group B.
Yes.
In 2008, it is what it is.
Well, I had not claimed my spot.
Right.
And in order to go to World's Strongest Man, I certainly was not going to get an invite unless I earned it.
Yeah, you had to qualify.
And so my back was kind of against the wall, but you got to see me battle through something like that to start with and say, I'm going to get this done. And I did.
Right.
I qualified, so then to come back and something much worse.
Right.
Okay. I've already, and this is just 2 examples. There's multiple other examples along the road where it's going to happen. We're going to make it happen. And then it happens. Right. So it's that positivity, but building back up to that, I think it's a very integral part of my success was having that backing from you. And, I don't know, this is a question I've never really asked this, but like through the whole process of the highs and the lows and whatever, what do you think my mindset was? Did you ever see a lot of doubt in me?
Yeah.
But how did I deal with the doubt?
So, not to get into the personal stuff.
Of course.
But I thought one thing had to happen for you to win again. I didn't think you were going to win again unless that one thing happened. Not to be too cryptic, but whatever.
Of course.
And so if that wasn't, I knew you were mentally tough enough. You were physically tough enough, obviously, physically strong enough. I knew you were mentally tough enough. I wasn't sure if you were going to channel that. I wasn't confident. I portrayed confidence.
This is like, you're talking like 2012, 13?
Yeah.
Okay.
End of 2012, beginning of 2013.
Okay.
Like the physical stuff was one thing,
Yep.
but like it was the other outside stuff that was even more of an hindrance.
Yep.
And I thought that like I said, I knew you were strong enough. I just didn't know that you were going to be able to challenge that strength or channel that strength.
Because it was such a...
It was dark.
Yeah, it was dark.
It was, I mean, we're talking, behind the curtains here and
Sure.
people don't know, but like, just trust when I say that it was dark.
Of course. Yep.
And like, I feigned confidence to you, but I wasn't confident. If I'm being like, we haven't talked about this ever. Like this is the first time we're talking about this.
Yeah.
So like, I wanted it for you. There were some times where I felt like I wanted it for you more than you wanted it for you.
Sure.
And I had to try and figure out how to, I don't want to say manipulate the situation, but like to like push you without pushing too hard because it was a very fragile situation. You know what I mean? So like I had to kind of play that tightrope right alongside with you.
Well, I know what you're saying.
Of course.
I definitely know what you're saying. And, there was times in that time period where I questioned myself.
Yeah.
Right. From a confidence standpoint.
Which is why I
climbing that mountain.
I had to feign the confidence.
Of course.
I was like, yeah, 100%. You got this, bro.
Yep.
But like deep down, I was like, I don't know. Like,
but there was some stuff, speaking of that, there was some stuff I had to do.
Right.
I had to make some changes. And I think that became clear to me. Sometimes when you're in it, you don't quite realize
100%.
what you need to do. And I had to do it.
Yep.
Right. And so there were some changes, and who knows if the physical was a manifestation of some of that.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Right. But you got to be strong mentally, physically. And if you have a weight that you need to get rid of, you got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And so I think that was such a time that was challenging for me, but going through it,
right,
coming out on the back end,
right,
even though there were some dark times, I'm stronger.
Right.
And I became stronger because of it. And I think that sometimes you have to go through, I mean, we've all had these things in our lives, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, you can't say that you go through your life and you don't have something that's challenging, something that's bad. And you don't even mean for it to be that way.
Yeah.
You don't mean for it to get that way. And sometimes it just happens over time. Kind of like, the frog in the pot of water.
Yeah.
You just kind of crank the temperature up a little bit, doesn't, you don't quite realize what's happening.
Right.
But that was what I kind of got to, for me. And those changes, I'm so thankful for those changes happening.
Right.
And climbing that mountain again.
Yeah.
And I've said many times, actually, winning in 2013 in a lot of ways means more to me than winning in 2011.
Oh, coming back from all that adversity and like knowing that, okay, I'm back. Because 2012, Worlds 2012, you weren't back.
No.
The Arnold 2013, you weren't back.
Yep.
Like you were right there, and finalists at the Worlds in fourth place or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then second place at the Arnold in 2013, but you weren't back yet.
Yeah.
It was 2013 Worlds. I'm back. Let's run. You know what I mean? And from there, transitioning into 2000, and I think the dark times, because all of us experienced it. Like it was your dark times, but like you said, we were all worried. And so I think
I'm sure you guys had conversations,
100%,
behind my back, or not behind my back, but amongst yourselves, saying like, all right, how could we help Ryan out? That kind of thing. And
100%.
And but it's from a caring standpoint. And I think that speaks even more about the group, and about the mentality, because you do care that much.
Yeah.
Right. And it's, I mean, there's a lot of situations. We're talking about me, of course, in mine. And, there's different situations that all of us in that group kind of went through, that we all were in that way. Right. So it's like you care. You really turn into brothers, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's not just hey, we're going to show up and train.
Right.
It's those memories. And, it's the same thing for me. Like I'll look at a trophy, right?
Yeah.
And a trophy's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's great to have up, and it represents certainly an accomplishment, but it also represents memories.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And having those memories and the stories that some of which we're sharing right now
Right.
are built, you know, the highs, the lows. What did you have to go through to get there?
Right. Right.
At the end of it, a lot of times the journey is what's important to get there. And I think that it's become even more clear for me, you know, getting back, going through those low points, getting back to the top of the mountain, staying up there, going through all the different stuff that I've had to go through over the years since you moved.
Right.
Right. It's there's been a lot of changes.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think that I quite realized in the moment, because we were so focused,
Right.
how good it was.
Yeah.
Right. And how hard that is to find.
Right.
It's very hard to find.
We couldn't see the forest through the trees. We like you said, we were in the moment. And then like that day in May when we said goodbye,
Horrible.
bro, we were like 4 teenage girls.
Literally.
Like Burke, Tyler, you and I were bawling our eyes out.
Yep.
Before I left. And it was one of those things where it was like, it's your group 100%.
Yeah.
But like, I kind of like the Reggie Jackson moniker. I'm the straw that stirs the drink.
It
You
is.
know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
so it was 100%, and it always has been, always will be your group. But like, I was very concerned when I got the call that we were leaving because my wife is in the military and got stationed at Walter Reed out in Maryland.
Yeah.
And like that goodbye, like, was the hardest of any. Like, I had family out in Colorado, and that goodbye was the goodbyes to the family was like a joyous occasion. And not saying that our goodbye wasn't joyous, but it was treacherous. As like it was like there was a lot of unknown, and it kind of came to fruition because like Bert kind of faded out. Tyler had response, you know what I mean? So it I don't want to say quickly, but it wasn't a long time. Yeah,
I mean, Tyler stuck around until 17.
Right.
And then, you know, obviously had his girls and life changed and all that. But that definitely was something where I had grown very accustomed to you being in the group. And again, you said things that I didn't need to say. Right. So if guys came in, you were always the guy, all right, let's get this set up. Let's get it rolling, whatever.
Right.
And everything just kind of didn't click. And also, as I brought in more people, they didn't understand the culture the same way that you did.
Right.
Because you were there from the get-go.
Yeah.
And you got to see my parents' garage.
Right.
And the, you know, quote unquote, very humble beginnings.
Oh, yeah.
Where, you know, the equipment's not very nice.
Right.
Right. It's just weights. It's a bar. It's this and that. And then over time, of course, I'm a guy that, you know this, reinvests into my training, reinvests in the equipment, and reinvests and spent a lot of money. Right. To get the setup. But now the new guys walking in are walking into a setup that's phenomenal.
Right.
And they didn't have to go to the garage with no heat.
Shovel snow and put ice melt down at the beginning of the session because we had to go outside and do frame 3 hours later, and we needed the ice to melt.
And I struggled with that, you know, just whatever. You and I talked a little bit about it, but I struggled a lot with how to build that mentality for these new guys that are coming in to train with me. And I don't know that I was ever successful.
That's the thing. Like, I would come out and train with these guys, and I'd be like, they're okay. Yeah. And they're, you know, whatever, not to bag on anybody. Like, everybody's great, but like, it's almost like you have to be part of the origin story
big time
to like grasp the whole concept.
Well, and I think this is, I've, you know, the stuff that I've heard about like West Side Barbell, whatever, you know, the guys that were there at the original crew, everybody that now goes there, it's like, oh, well, I just want to go to West Side. And it's the aura of West Side, but the heart and soul of that was built much before. Right. And it may be, and I don't know. I mean, I'm just using that as one example. I don't know if the culture is the same, or maybe it is. Maybe, you know, Louis has kept the people there. And this is just one gym that's popping off the top of my head.
Well, yeah, because that's the famous one.
Yeah. It's just that culture, you know, how do you teach that to people? And again, I did try to have meetings, and I did try to talk, and I did try to explain. And, you know, there was different times where I would still do the, whatever you want to call it, kind of conditioning type of mental training that would break guys
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
And we tried to do some of that.
Right.
And I don't know that it ever really fully set in where we were trying to go and what the objective was.
Right.
And so that became increasingly more difficult for me.
Yeah.
Not that you don't try, but it's just kind of that message, you know, and you kind of hit the nail on the head, I think, when we were getting off to the start, and you said, my mentality walking in was, what am I going to do to make the group better, to make Brian better,
Right.
And to bring something to the table.
Right.
And I think that really, in a lot of ways, is a takeaway that a lot of younger athletes that may be listening to this, if you get an opportunity to
Right.
train, and I don't care who you're training
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's the best in the world,
Right.
or you're training just with somebody else in the gym. If you walk in and say, you know what, I'm going to get you better.
Right. Right.
And we're going to get better together.
That's the thing. Yeah.
And this is how it's going to work.
Right.
Versus, well, I'm going to do me today, and I don't really care
Right.
what you do.
Right.
I don't care how good you get.
Right.
I actually really want you to fail.
Right. I hope I beat you. And,
It's a cancer.
right.
It's very
Oh, yeah.
much a cancer, and that hard work ethic, I think, is getting harder and harder to find, in that mentality of, okay, we're not walking into this with an ego,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that's something, you know, that you said in this as well, that you know, I think is a great point, because I never have approached my training with an ego.
Right.
And a lot of people, I think, are surprised by that,
Yeah.
because, you know, I certainly know a lot,
Mhm.
and I've learned a lot, and I've
Mhm.
experienced a lot, but I'm always willing to learn
Right.
and try something new. And if we could come up with a different way to do something, or improve on a weakness
Right.
at all,
Right.
I mean, all of these things are very true for me.
Right.
And I think that's important, because now you see a lot of younger lifters that have an ego that won't
Right.
fit through a door.
Right.
Why?
Right.
What have you done?
Yeah.
What have you done? It's always, and I got a kick out of whenever we did have a new guy come in that thought they were really strong,
Right.
and thought that they were really good. You're walking in, and this is what a lot of people can't handle,
Mhm.
especially guys,
Right.
right? They want to be the big fish,
Right.
right? They want to be the top dog,
Right.
if they will. What we had at that time, where our group was so good,
Mm-hmm.
was we had 4 guys that were very strong,
Right.
but also, to some extent, it was working to be the top dog, but then somebody else's nobody was worried about, well, you know, I'm not getting as good as you, or you just beat
Right.
me on that. It was like, man, all right, well, you beat me on that, I'm going to come back and beat you on this.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where it went. So, you know, of course, at the end of it, you're going to always have somebody who's the strongest.
Right.
But when the person that's the strongest doesn't necessarily walk in with an ego,
Right.
nobody else is allowed to have an ego.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you think you're strong, well, I could, at any point in time, I could put you in your place,
Right.
if I need to.
Right.
But that's not how we're attacking the sessions.
Right.
It's like, all right, I want you to get 10 more pounds on the bar.
Right.
And if you get that, I'm going to give you the energy that you're giving me.
Right.
Even if I'm lifting 400 or 500 pounds more than that.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the exact same culture.
Right.
And it's not, well, I don't care what you're doing.
Right.
It's all about me. So everybody's just going to lift. And then when Brian goes, oh, you better be hyped up because
Right.
Brian's lifting.
Right.
That is never what I wanted.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
I wanted everybody to improve. And if anybody in that group went to compete, it was, I wanted them to be successful
Right.
too. So yes, we're talking a lot about me doing the biggest contest.
Right. Right.
But when you went to compete locally,
Yeah.
or Tyler did, or whatever,
Right.
it was like, you need to go handle it, because now you're representing what
Right.
we're about.
Right. Yeah.
So
Definitely.
you're wearing that shirt, you're walking out there, you're part of the culture.
Right.
Now you have to step up and be and do your part.
Right.
Right. So we're all with you too.
Right.
And that was what another aspect of it that I think made us so good, is we were proud of that.
Right. Right.
All of us were very proud of that. And
Right.
not that other guys that have come to train with me since weren't proud of it.
Right.
Because I think
Right.
they were. And I
Right.
think that they kind of understood, but it's, again, so hard to talk through the highs and the lows and what I had to go through. It's so
Right.
hard to explain.
Right. Yeah.
Because when you walk in to an amazing setup with amazing equipment, every bar that you can imagine.
Right.
All the stuff. When I started with one bar.
Right.
I was training in a normal gym and I had to buy my safety squat bar. I had to make that investment, and it was a lot of money for me to buy that one bar so that I could get better.
Right.
And then it went from there. And then like I said, I literally went into debt to try to make the equipment happen. Right. And, you know, it's just that culture was so special.
Right.
And I think that's really the takeaway from this is, hey, there's a lot of ups, there's a lot of downs the road goes, but if you can check your ego at the door, you can have a work ethic, and you can be a team player that's trying to make the team better.
Right, right. It's one of those things. I'm a scientist by trade, and I always look at it like
we didn't even talk about any of this other stuff. It's just like, okay, Eddie came to training.
Yeah. But like my thought and my philosophy is if you think you're the smartest guy or girl, woman in the room, or even if you are, or you're the strongest guy or woman in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Totally.
Like you can't, you've already lost if that's the case. You've lost the opportunity to improve. Yeah. If obviously you're the strongest guy in every room you go into, so you can't look at it that way. But if you think you're strong enough, you've already lost. Yep. So it's one of those things where it's like, what do I need to do to push myself to not consider myself the strongest in the room? Because if I think I'm the strongest, then I'm happy. I'm content. And content athletes, content performers are lackluster.
Big time.
You know?
And I think that you're exactly right. Try to find somebody stronger. Right. For me, I think the power was setting those bars so high that I was never content. Right. Never. Right. And so it was, even if you and I were training together, and like I said, the bar weight is crazy higher. Right. Right. I've got to beat that. Yeah. So it's not, hey, I'm content with just lifting more than you. Right. Or even when we had other stronger guys come in. Yeah. I'm content with just doing a little bit more than you. Right. It was like, no, I'm not just content with doing that. I'm going to try to beat it by 100 pounds. Right. I'm going to try to beat it by 100. I'm going to go to the level where I'm trying to beat everybody in the world. Yeah. And at everything, not just at one thing. Oh, yeah. You know, and trying to be, you know, and I always said I wanted to walk into any World's Strongest Man contest, top level contest, and be able to take top 3 in every single event. Right. And that, I was to that point, you know, and have been at that point. It's a big product, you know, of the hard work. Right. But being at that point is huge. Right. And I think that, you know, setting those bars when you don't necessarily have somebody beside you that's stronger than you. Right. But those people beside you are pushing you to that bar. Right. Where you've got to step up and hit that bar. Right. You know, so it's just that culture, man. I mean, we had a lot of fun training yesterday. Yeah. We did that again yesterday. The same thing. Yep. We had a set of movements, a circuit, and it was like, oh, we're gonna scale it because it was at the end of the session. We were tired. I had traveled, whatever. Yeah. But like, we're gonna do X, and I was like, okay, Brian, X is good enough for second at World's Strongest Man. This is it. Yep. So are we gonna do X plus 1, or are we just gonna settle? Yeah. And that was a gut check for me because like, I've trained alone for the last 2 years. Sorry. Yeah. I have a thing in my basement. So like, there's not these pushing instances. Yep. So like, I put that out there, but then I was like, oh, I got to run through that brick wall too. Yep. And we did it. Yeah, we did. Like it was a challenge. I didn't know, like it was unknown. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to finish this or not. Yeah. But I put that challenge out to Brian. Yeah. Now I can't back out. What would that make me? Yeah. So, but it's pushing. And I said in one point in this, you always knew how to push my buttons to go a little bit further. Right. And it's like, all right. And I could tell you were tired. Yeah. Oh yeah. And I was like, all right, he's saying that he's tired. Right. Well, I'm not allowed to be tired. Yeah. And so you push that next level. And it's just, it's cool to go back to that, that exact same thing. And that's what naturally happens. I think when you have trained with somebody for so long and know that, it's neat to come back to that, like to come full circle. Right. You know, and I even said to you yesterday, I was like, man, you got to get down on the East Coast and just get back out here, you know, so we can keep doing this. But obviously that's life. Right. Life happens and things change. And, you know, who knows what would have happened with the group if you would have stayed and things would have been a little bit different in that aspect. I don't know. Right. I don't know. But this is all part of the story.
Right.
And the story is still being written.
Right. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy that I come out to train 3 or 4 times a year, and I left almost 8 years ago now.
Yeah.
We can.
That's 8 years. That's crazy. Yeah.
2014, May
It's
will be
coming up.
8
Yeah.
years that I left.
Yeah.
But like, we still pick up
Right there.
based on the previous.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, it's
Well,
only
and you still go to the contest with me.
right.
And you still, you try to come out maybe for 1 or 2 sessions here or there. And then you still, go to the contest and know what I need before I need it.
Right.
And it's still that same thing that you pick up on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that doesn't change.
Right.
Even though you're living in a different spot. Yes, it would be wonderful to go through the whole training cycle and everything, but it's still there.
Yeah.
And it's still powerful. So anything else you want to close with?
It's always a blast to come out and see Carrie and the kids and you, obviously, and James. Thanks, James too.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. This is
Of course,
freaking
man.
amazing. Obviously, I wish nothing but the success for this, and it gets to #1 on all the podcast lists, and that'll be something that we can talk about in our old age.
100%, man. 100%. No, it's great having you out, and it's something where, again, we're not in the room that I thought we would be in right now, but I wanted to have you on early on because I think it's important for people to understand where I kind of came from,
Right. Yeah.
and where, like you said, when I was just Brian, before I was anybody. And the thing is I think in a lot of ways, or at least I hope, that I'm still that same guy.
Oh, still the same guy.
And very much, hey, I'm Brian, man. Right. Like I've pursued my dreams, I pursued my goals, and I've been able to accomplish so many of them.
Right.
And we're still going.
Right. It isn't over.
But again, those wins, I'm still looking for the next win.
Right.
And I'm working on that win right now. And this is part of it.
Right.
This is a part of a way to share with people and to get my message out in a different way.
Right.
And hopefully empower people by what I have gone through, what I've had to overcome and where I came from.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes, this right now, this story, this setup, making this happen is not a byproduct of the last 2 weeks.
Right.
It's a byproduct of the last 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that journey and how much hard work and sacrifices had to happen, I think it's important. And I thought it was important to have you out to talk about it a little bit because a lot of people don't know that side of me, and they don't know what I've gone through and what I've had to do. And again, maybe I'm sure people are going to be interested in some of the things that we touched on, and maybe we'll have to do a little bit of a follow-up because there's so many angles and directions we can take, with all of this. But, at the end of the day, that culture was built over a long time, and moving that gym around and all the hard work that it took to move the gym around was also part of building that culture and the new facilities and all of that. And now, as we speak, another facility is being built, which will be bigger and hopefully better. And we're going to have to build a new culture there too, of winning. Yeah. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to figure out how to win. And hopefully in doing that, with doing this podcast and some of the things that we're going to do there, we can inspire so many other people to win in their life in whatever, form that might be for them. Yeah. Right. However they want to apply that to their life, they can take some type of inspiration from this and run with it.
Right. Just know if you set an absurd goal for yourself in your own personal bubble, something that you think is absurd is possible.
It is.
And I think that's the overarching story of the last 15 years. You know what I mean? Like you put these crazy goals and made them public too. Not just like, I'm saying it quietly, but like made it public and okay, I put myself on blast now. I got to work for it and made it happen. And everybody can do that.
Yep. Everybody can do it. You can set those goals. And sometimes like the goals that we used to write on the wall in the gym and that I now write down in different areas. If people could see what some of those goals were then and how many of those came to life and what they are now. Yeah. I have even said at some points what I've got planned just for this year scares me a little bit.
Right.
But it excites me.
That's the thing.
Because we're going to get there, and I have confidence, and I'm willing to do what it takes to get there.
Right.
And you know, a goal without, you know, putting in the hard work is only a goal.
Right.
And
that's more of a wish than a goal.
Wish. That's it. You're dreaming.
Yeah.
You're dreaming.
Yeah.
But when you dream big and then you work
for it
unbelievably hard,
right.
great things can happen. So anyway, buddy, I really appreciate your time. It was fun to kind of go down memory lane a little bit.
I'm proud of myself. There were no tears shed today.
Yes,
so with that,
we touched on a couple points there where I was like,
it could have gone.
Yeah, if we went in there a little bit harder, you know, it's like the ups and downs. But it's all part of the story,
That's
man.
it.
And it's been wonderful. It's still being written.
Yep.
And hope you guys enjoyed us sharing a little bit. And you know, please leave a comment below the video. Please get subscribed to the podcast, because we're going to keep a lot of great content coming your way. We're going to have fun with this. And it's going to be a learning experience for us as we keep growing with it. But hope all of you are doing amazing. Remember to go out and be great, and we'll check you guys later.